You're out.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. It's June 3rd, 2024, and this is a regular meeting of Moscow City Council. Bryce.
Yeah, if you're able, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks very much. First up tonight is a proclamation. It's the National Pollinator Week proclamation. Whereas pollinator species such as birds, bats, bees, and other insects play a vital role in producing crops grown in the United States, ensuring Americans have a variety of fruits, vegetables, and nuts to support a healthy diet. And whereas pollinators provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy, diverse ecosystems in towns and cities, and whereas pollinator-friendly communities can benefit local and regional economies through healthier ecosystems, increased vegetable and fruit crop yields, and increased demand for pollinator-friendly plant materials from local growers, and whereas pollination plays a vital role in the trees and plants of our community, enhancing our quality of life and creating recreational and economic development opportunities, and whereas pollinators are essential for healthy, biodiverse ecosystems across public and private lands, including agricultural lands and national forests and grasslands. These lands provide forage, fish, wildlife, timber, water, mineral resources, and recreational and economic development opportunities for communities across America. And whereas the City of Moscow manages parks, public landscaping, and other public lands that include greenways and wildlife habitats. Now, therefore, I, Art Betke, the Mayor of Moscow City, Idaho, the City of Moscow, do hereby proclaim June 17th through June 23rd, 2024 as National Pollinator Week. And here in the City of Moscow, being an affiliate of the Bee City USA, urge all citizens to recognize this observation. So, David Schott.
Hooray!
Try reading that many whereas.
Yeah. How many was it this time?
There's only 6.
Only 6 whereases.
I'd be done at 1.
Yeah, and where he has all this other stuff.
And like, and so.
He was just buzzing through those.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I get it.
Thank you.
Mayor Betke, members of City Council, thank you for having us tonight. I'd just like to recognize the City of Moscow has become a Bee City USA affiliate since 2022. In that time, the Bee City USA subcommittee has been very busy and a resource in our spring planting season. If you're interested in pollinators, on our city website underneath Public Works Parks, there's a Bee City USA tab. And on that tab, you can find a list of pollinator species that our Bee City USA subcommittee put together. It's a great list. And we've also got a list of local native nurseries. And so with that, I would encourage everybody, if you're out there planting, to think about our pollinators. So
Love it.
thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving along, next up is mayor appointments, and I have none tonight. And next is public comment and mayor's response period. And for the next 15 minutes in 3-minute increments, we invite members of the public to come up to the podium, state your name and address, and tell us whatever it is that's on your mind, as long as it's not on tonight's agenda nor pending before Planning and Zoning or the Board of Adjustment. Any takers?
My name is Kent Salisbury. I'm a resident of Moscow, Idaho, now for 6 years, and resident of the state of Idaho for 15 years. I have a few concerns I'd like to bring before City Council this evening about some of the recent city planning developments. As far as keeping public notice and keeping the public informed with the highway reconstruction, the proposed bypass in the future, and its effect on the nearby hills. Overall development of the new Home Depot, I feel, is an important new development that needs to be well understood in the scope of larger city planning. And as well, the proposal for a new high school, that it should be well evaluated with the old building, and all possibilities should be considered. I have for the Tree Council, and Moscow, Idaho has a Tree City USA. I've noticed there's been a lot of trees that got cut down in the recent past. The trees by Journey's End Store here on 3rd Street, the Northern Red Oaks, and then there's one by the Swan Family Inc. There was a horse chestnut that got cut down by the Wellness Center. That was a beautiful old tree. There's a recent limber pine that was cut down on A and Lou Allen by the property owner who was renovating his property. And as well, that you request more action from the city council to plant more trees, not only within the city and the trees down by the co-op as well on the sidewalk that got cut down. But that they're working on their new plantings to ensure the longevity of those high value trees. I spoke once before about graffiti on the shed on the Palouse Creek Trail. And when you go up past the park here north of the interchange, you can see a large amount of graffiti that's been there for some time. And I think that's wise to get painted over with the matte paint. And as far as concerns about trash disposal, trash refuse in the city, I think it would be wise to implement a public campaign to be leaders throughout the nation and here in the state of Idaho to remind people that in this modern day, we don't need to be littering our trash. And we have a very progressive type of drains to the river ideal where we want to keep the trash out of the river. So that's something we can honestly preach more so with posters or the like to inform people of the correct procedures to deal with their public waste. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Ken.
Salisbury. You chose a good day to come and talk to us with the head of parks sitting right back there, who is our liaison with the Tree Commission. So thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Lori Smith, and I'm involved with the Ren Fair. And we had our shakedown meeting yesterday, which we discussed the goods, the cons, the bad, the ugly, the better, what we can do better. And it came up that the city isn't quite making the park ready for us. Like the trash cans weren't emptied, the bathrooms weren't clean. We have a special gal here, Jen, who has to put in many hours to make sure that the facilities are ready for public presentation. We don't want, our fair goers in their costume and all of their, glad jewels to go into a bathroom that has no toilet paper, dirty floors, dirty walls. Apparently the utility room that we use isn't organized enough. She needs a step stool to get up top to the toilet paper or what have you. And I guess we just like to request that maybe a little more attention is put into the park by Parks and Rec to make sure that it's ready to go, because we're all volunteers. We're not getting paid for this. And we feel like we shouldn't show up to have to clean up something the city should have done to have it public ready. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks,
Thank you for your
Lori.
comments. We'll look into that and see what we can do. Thank you. Who else wants to give it a go? Okay, hearing no one, we'll move along to Citizens Commission report for the Moscow Transportation Commission, starring Cody Riddle and Scott Sumner.
You've used that bad boy before.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just briefly, it's my pleasure to introduce Scott Sumner. He's the chair of the Transportation Commission, but it's an entire group that's actually quite passionate about transportation planning and not just accommodating automobiles in and around our city, but all forms of transportation, including pathways. They dabble with the scooters, touched on robots and things like that. So all forms of transportation, and the group's unique in that they also understand the relationship between transportation planning and land use planning. So it's been a pleasure to work with them. It's been a little bit lighter year, but Scott's going to walk you through some of the highlights now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cody. Welcome, Scott.
Hello, Scott. I think I've met most of you, but Yeah, I think this is my second one I've done, my second year on the Transportation Commission as the chair. So I'll try and hopefully provide enough information for you guys now that I've got it down a little bit. So yeah, our purpose is really looking at the transportation, and that doesn't deal with just cars. It's the people, vehicles, bicycles, and now the scooters and everything that people use to get in, around, and through the city. This year, we probably focused a lot more with ITD and dealing with a lot of the coordination and discussion with them, getting updates about, south of town. And they've had a couple studies that have traveled through 95 and as well as out to Highway 8. So there's a couple of things there. They've had open houses that have been around the city that we've had opportunities to go to. So our purpose of duties is really to make our recommendations to you guys for any of the policies, programs, any of the transportation items that come through the city. I don't know if we invited all the Transportation Commission members, but Haley is our council liaison. And I think a lot of these people have been on this Transportation Commission way longer than I have, and they're on multiple commissions. So I'm sure you guys are very familiar with them. A couple of, the bullet points I hit on the Pell studies by ITD, but streets and subdivision ordinance. One of the things we do in coordination with that is the development review. We look at all the subdivisions and get to make our recommendations, whether do they have appropriate access? Is it appropriate for the area, and how do people move through them? It's kind of our biggest one. The citizen survey, we got to pick out our questions and get our feedback from the city. And a lot of the interesting things that we've looked at is bus routes and busing from here to Pullman or the airport, and what people's general feeling is, because you hear from some people about how important it is, but it's good to get kind of idea of how many people ride the bus now. And part of that survey I thought was interesting was there's a lot of people, the majority of people found it was very important for the bus riding and the access to Pullman and Schweitzer, but very few of them, if any, had ever ridden the bus. So I thought that was interesting, even though that, I don't ride her and it's not available for me or how it worked, but there was a lot more. I was surprised at how many people supported it, even though they've either never ridden it or very infrequently have. So I thought that was one of the most interesting things I got out of the citizen survey. So as part of the development review, I talked about the subdivisions. We also look at some of the bike path painting and how we identify shared access routes for bikes and how we could share those with cars, and trying to identify major corridors and how we can make adjustments, improvements to our bike plan. Wild Rose Court was a recent one. I think you guys heard that in the last or the previous one. We did make some recommendations about, creating fire access and how the surrounding area will be impacted by this, and we're still providing fire maneuverability for the surrounding areas. The Pineview Addition is just another one that we've reviewed in the last couple months. So that one's kind of fresh on people's minds. Let's see. And then what's next? Coming back with the citizen survey, we've really started looking at our goals and priorities and what our goals for us to kind of look at and help provide as the commission. A lot of the public outreach, I think we have a day for the farmers market that'll be coming up. So that'll be a good opportunity to address some of the people's needs or comments that don't get to come here or have a citizen survey. The guest speakers, we have had Whitman County come talk to us on a few other topics. ITD comes, so it's good to get the regional aspect of a lot of things that we can provide comments and updates to you guys on, because that's not the transportation within our community that we kind of have to worry about. It's the whole region. And then, exploring, better ways to communicate with those agencies, commissions, so that we can provide better recommendations and better information to the city and as well as the city council. Now the transportation plan update, I know it's one that we've printed out and we started reviewing. It's been a while since we reviewed it. That says July 2014. And we have an update to do on that to help with our compliance. So we'll be looking at that the next year. That's kind of a big one. It's not a full update, but it's kind of just a medium update. So You guys have any questions?
Bryce?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Scott. Yeah, thank you. I'm curious, when you're engaging with people in the community, how much are you engaging with students, and kind of their movement through the city and their movement from close to campus to on campus, which would be predominantly walking or biking, maybe scooting if they have their own scooters, right?
Scooting.
That's a good point. Yeah. So I'm curious, like what level of connection you have with some of the student population.
We have the U of I liaison and Steve, and he has a lot better idea on that.
Sure.
The only ones that I get is my kids, because I have one who's going to be a U of I next year, and then some of the interns that work for us, and they, I kind of get some of that just informally from them and how they commute or what uses they use either at WSU or Idaho, and kind of get an idea, because it's WSU and Idaho, it's a completely different animal in terms of busing and transportation and how they get around. So as far as commission is not as much as we probably need to. Idaho's a little more contained to that area, even though the students are all over, but that is an opportunity that we could probably advance a little more.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Gina?
I'm anxious or keen, not anxious. That has a negative connotation. I'm keen to see your medium upgrade to the transportation plan. I really like that plan. And so I'm anxious to see what you bring forth.
I was just going to add, and in response to Bryce's comments, right now we've got so the new ASUI president, who I don't know when she gets sworn in, but Martha,
She's sworn in.
it's official. So Martha Smith, our new ASUI president for this year, she's planning to maintain the position in her cabinet who has someone who sits directly on the Smart Transit Board, which is
Nice.
great. And that's been really helpful. And I think in part it's been really nice in terms of accessibility, since that meeting is on campus. She's been able, her and Tanner both have appointed folks who don't have cars in Moscow. And so they've been a great voice. And so some of those things that those students bring up at Smart Transit, we've been able to kind of funnel around. But I am curious about a bigger conversation. I can't quite remember how the non-voting or short-term seats work on which commissions, which she had asked about last time I ran into her in town. But that's a bigger conversation. My question for Scott, because there is one, I can't remember, do most of these subdivision things come to Transportation Commission before they go to planning and zoning, or is it the other way around?
I think usually it does, but there has, on a
Just
rare
depends.
occurrence based on scheduling, or it may not, but I think the majority of the time it does.
And that's not required by state, but I've appreciated that, and I've appreciated the things that you've been able to help shape in the conversation before it goes to planning.
It's a lot
and
more
zoning.
fun to review other people's subdivisions
Yeah,
and have my own be reviewed by you
No
guys.
kidding.
So it's always appreciative.
love it. That's what I got.
Anybody
right.
else?
Thank you
Okay,
very
great.
much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott.
Okay, next up is a public hearing. The Idaho Community Development Block Grant, the status of grant-funded park project activities with Elisa Anderson. And because this is a public hearing, the way this one will work is Elisa gets up, presents the issue at hand, and after that, we'll hear from the public. But I think at this time, we'll just condense everything to any kind of public comment, whether it's positive, negative, or of neutral nature, after which the council will sit and deliberate and see whether or not to accept the report. So at this time, public hearing is open. Elisa, it's all yours.
Thank you. I'm the grants manager and the ADA coordinator for the city. And before I get started, I've put out a sign out sheet. Idaho Department of Commerce requests that we do that. So I have those clipboards out. And then a copy of my PowerPoint is also on the front chair here if anyone would like one of those. And there was an additional report that was a little more detailed that was included in the packet. But some of the print was small, so if someone wanted a larger copy, those are also laying there along with my cards if you have questions. So tonight we're here to talk to you about the progress that we've made on parks projects and a portion of these projects were funded by the Idaho Community Development Block Grant. It's a competitive grant program that's administered by the Idaho Department of Commerce, and they're funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the allocation that Idaho receives depends upon many factors. One of them is population, and the funding formula is part of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. And also the formula is based upon population, poverty, and age. The Idaho Department of Commerce is the one who distributes the federal funding to cities and to counties and non-entitlement cities. And I've listed there the entitlement cities that we do have in Idaho, just noting that Twin Falls was recently added to that list. In order to qualify, then if you're a city or a county, you must meet the ICDBG, which is the Idaho Community Development Block Grant National Objective, which is you have to be more than 51% low to moderate income. And the city of Moscow right now is at 55.8. The grant applications are competitive under each program. This one was under the Parks program. They require matching funds, and you have to support the need and have a project that's ready to go. The application has 3 requirements. As I discussed before, you have to be a city in the eligible activity, which is a public park, and addresses the national objective, which is the 51% LMI. Priority is given to, under the parks category, existing neighborhood parks focused on ADA accessibility related to restrooms, sidewalks, and parking. We submitted an application that had projects for both parks, Mountain View and Indian Hills. We submitted the grant application in September of 2020. The grant was awarded with an award letter in November of 2020, and then we have to submit the environmental and have it approved before they send us an actual contract, which we received in July of 2021, and the award was for $225,000. The Mountain View project was remodeling of the existing restroom. We had just two separate male-female restrooms that had different stalls in them. And then now we've transferred those into 4 family-friendly restrooms. And then we also had proposed to have a pathway system between the 2 parking lots, and to add a couple of ADA parking spots in the furthest east parking lot. And for Indian Hills, the project was to purchase an installation of a prefabricated restroom, ADA pathway to that restroom, and parking, a designated ADA parking. Project activities that we've accomplished to date. Mountain View Park. In 2021, we procured the design professional and architect to design the remodel of the bathrooms, the restrooms. And in 2022, we bid and awarded that contract. That was Springer Construction. And the project was completed in the spring, late or early summer, I think, of 2023. Indian Hills. Back in 2022, we procured and purchased a prefabricated restroom. And there's a little more to that story, but it was stored at the city shop for a little over a year, almost 2 years now, I guess. And also, we combined the Mountain View pathway, which was concrete work, basically, Indian Hills restroom installation, and the ADA pathway and parking into one bid to put it out to contractors, because it was like work that fit together, and the design of the restroom, and that was a different type of construction. We first solicited bids for the Mountain View and the Indian Hills project in September of 21. We received 1 bid, and it was over budget by $111,325, so that was a rejected bid. We procured again, solicited in March of 2022, and we did not receive any bids. After that, we had, based upon the first bid that we had received and taking a look at what was really necessary in the projects and what we could cut out. We changed the scope of work, and Idaho Department of Commerce approved that we could remove the pathway that would connect the two parking lots at Mountain View. And we do hope to do that project in the future, but it just didn't fit in the scope with the budget money that we had. We solicited bids again for just the Indian Hills project, and that would be to install the restroom, and then the pathway and ADA parking. We received one bid in August of 2022, and it was $150,000 over, and that one was also rejected. At this point, we kind of went back to the drawing board, and originally the restroom was going to be located kind of on top of the hill, and it was going to be about $75,000 just to get the restroom to there, because we'd have to go in through the adjacent lot, or an extra large crane that no one around here actually had. So engineering worked with Parks and the water department, and they were able to relocate the location of the restroom down lower to the sidewalk. And they had to redesign how the water and sewer and everything was going to be put down lower in the piping, and they had to order a special pump and some different things. So we put just that package back out to bid. And because we had two failed procurements or solicitations, the Department of Commerce was fine with us sending out the package to contractors in our area that did that type of work. And so we solicited it out to 6 contractors between June and December. We asked to have bids submitted in June at one point. We didn't get anything. We put it back out again, talked to several contractors thinking later in the year that they would be able to maybe bid on it in the late fall, early winter, and then maybe for a spring project. And we talked to multiple contractors. We had a list, and when it came right down to it, we didn't get any bids for the bid due date in December. So back to the drawing board, and the city had been looking at maybe doing some self-performance of some of the smaller projects. And so our engineers worked together with Public Works, Parks, and the Water Department to go ahead and self-perform the restroom installation. And we're looking, and I'll update you a little more on the concrete pathway, but that we might need to do a small bid to get that finished up.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Is this our first prefab restroom in a park that we've tried?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So the original project schedule, we anticipated bidding and putting everything out for contract in 2022. Of course, if you remember back, the cause of delays, construction rejected no bids. We had COVID-19, and the inflation impacted a lot of the construction costs. Under the current schedule with city labor, and I'll show you pictures when we move forward here a little bit, but the Indian Hills restroom, water and sewer lines were put in, and the site was prepped and poured. The restroom was moved from the city shop to the site, the electrical, and that should have been plumbing connection. I missed that, not public connection. And the ADA pathway and parking, we're still discussing how we're going to complete that, but we will get it done this summer no matter what. And we're looking for project closeout by the end of August so that we can apply for another one of these grants again by fall. Just under the Idaho Community Development Block Grant, a little more on the project beneficiaries, which is where the low to moderate income comes into play. The statistics that we're working under right now are from the American Communities Survey 2011 to 2015, and we anticipate there'll be updates with late 24, early 25, but as I said previously, we're at 55.8 low to moderate income, and we have to be at least 51. These projects that we proposed remove existing barriers listed in the draft transition plan for public facilities, parks, and programs. And upon completion of all the project elements, both parks will be accessible to all Moscow residents, enhancing the quality of life and all those who use the parks. Here's our original budget and where we are now. In the top budget, administrative expenses, we receive in-kind $22,500. I'm a certified grant administrator under the Idaho Community Development Block Grant Program, so that is provided as in-kind match. Design professional, $86.75. And then the construction costs, if you look up at the top, the grant was $225. City cash estimated at $36,162, and $52,000 estimated in engineering design and construction management for a total in-kind match of $74,500. Gave us a total project cost of $335,662. Where we're actually at right now, right now at City Cash, we've had the design professional we paid and the cash that we paid for Springer Construction, $58,532. So our total cash out of pocket right now, including the cash that we've put into the Indian Hills project to date. So right now we're at the same amount on in-kind. I do need to run an updated report, but I think our in-kind is probably much higher than that at this point. Renee was out last week, so she's the master of that report, so I'll get that from her later on. So the difference in costs of the original budget to actual right now is $37,230. Does not include the pathway at Mountain View or at Indian Hills Park yet in the parking spot. So this is just a detailed amount of current and estimated project cost to date. So the Mountain View construction of the bathroom was $140,420. So we had total there of $155,280. Indian Hills, the restroom was $65,409. What we have into the project so far is $27,703 of cash outlay from the city. Anticipated cost to complete the Indian Hills Park, and I did not have the invoices for electrical, and we're not quite sure how we're going to handle the concrete pathway and the ADA. So we're estimating that at $50,000, which would bring us total estimated and paid to date of $143,112. So total project cost $298,392. We have received reimbursement of $206,730 in grant funds. We have remaining grant funds of $18,270 to bring us to that $225,000 grant award. The Idaho Department of Commerce has some CARES funds that they have not distributed yet, and they have increased the amount that you can receive for a public park project. And they've shared with us previously that we could receive up to $45,000 more for additional costs, but we're waiting. They were out of the office last week, and we'll be talking to them this Friday and then waiting to see where we end up with getting the pathway finished to request those additional funds. And we did go through that process of coming to council when we thought we'd have this project done, and we requested approval to ask for those additional funds. So we've brought that before you previously. So this is what the inside of the Mountain View restrooms look like right now. And if you hadn't seen them before, these are very nice restrooms. One of them stays heated in the winter and is unlocked in the winter, and then 3 of them are closed. There is also a baby changing station in them. So this is what the project looked like shortly before we started, or right after they moved some groundwork. But that's the porta potty that's there that's being replaced. This is city crews, engineering, water, and street project people out there getting the work done in-house. Here's a picture of the crane that was brought in to move the restroom off the flatbed trailer and onto the site. Here we go. It's almost there.
Proportions are so funny.
And that's where it's sitting right now. So it's there. It's in place. So I'd stand for any questions anyone might have regarding the project.
So any questions before we move on to public?
I just have one, Mr. Mayor. Is the overall feel of the prefab bathroom experience worth redoing? I'm very intrigued by this, and it sounds like even though we didn't get private bids to install it, hopefully, it made it not so daunting for staff to take on, but.
I think in discussions with engineering, we're not sure.
Okay.
Couple of reasons why. When we purchased that restroom, the company was located in Spokane, or when we first got our quotes and we were going to purchase that one, the company CXT moved from Spokane to Boise. So that made a difference, and that was one of the reasons why we needed to have it located at the city shop, because they were moving everything. So several other block grant awardees have purchased those restrooms. There's one in Potlatch and Deary. Yes. I think if we knew now what we didn't know then, and the process we went through, it probably could have been handled much better, because CXT actually will deliver on site and drop it off there. But we previously had it located up higher, and CXT, after we had purchased the bathroom, we realized they didn't have a crane big enough to put it up closer to the playground area. And then, so we were looking at coming from the adjacent lot that's privately owned, and the property owners wanted us to do some special work to that lot to bring it in. And so we have a lot more knowledge than we did. And so I think, we're going to be looking at Lola Clyde for a restroom next, and we'll certainly be looking at that. When they built the restroom in Friendship Square down at the Jackson Street parking lot, it was a pretty expensive project, but we also learned from that project.
Right.
So I can't say that will be the same route we'll go again. I'm going to leave that up to Scott.
Love that.
Traeger. But it is an option, but we will look at other options. And I don't know if there's any other vendors out there now. There might be.
Cool.
So.
Thank you.
I just have one question that might lead to another question, but it's a knowledge gap on my part. So when we get the grant money and we went out for bid and it came too high, and then we decided to self-perform that underneath the city, how does the agency that hands out the grants, how do they see that as us self-performing that work? In the sense of, how does I have an idea of how the financing works, but is it just letting them know that we're doing that ourselves? Are we paying ourselves for that, or can you help me?
Yeah. So all of our projects have project codes, and those project codes are attached to everyone's timesheets and all of the project expenses in our BS&A accounting system.
Okay.
So we're able to track that.
So we track it, and we're able to bill towards the money that we receive from the grant, like any contractor would that's going for the work.
And as far as the 52,000 that we originally documented, we did give them a proposal in our grant application of estimated man hours, and it was actually pretty low. They may not ask us to support that with additional documentation, but I'm sure they will with the self-performance of the in-kind work that we're doing in addition. And then we'll submit all of our receipts also for, the 26,000 of expenses we've had for self-performing the work, and that was supplies and equipment rental and pumps and different things.
Yeah, I'm sure that having this new, I wouldn't say it's a new process, but it's something that we don't do probably every day from a city side of things.
Mhm.
The way I look at it is it was a good thing to do to
Mhm.
increase our capacity for other projects, and relatively safe from a construction perspective.
Mhm.
And we educated and trained staff to do something for other projects.
And I think that Bill is in discussion with some of the other department heads on looking at that for a future needs. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know, or maybe Bill knows, the reason we didn't get bids? Is the project are they just too small for the contractors that are in the area?
Yeah, we pulled the contractors. The first bid we got one bid, and the amount for a mobilization was 100,000. And I think, part of that was where the restroom was located and at Indian Hills. And then that contractor that we received that bid from usually does come in high on projects, but the mobilization costs on that one were extremely high. The next one that we got a bid from was from a contractor that was doing some other work for us in the city. And again, it was, they had so much other work that they didn't probably need the work. And so a lot of contractors at that point in time were putting out high bids, plus the cost of construction materials, especially if they bid it in the fall for a spring construction. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. Labor costs have increased a lot. And this is a Davis-Bacon project, but we do find now that most contractors' employees are paid already at a Davis-Bacon rate for Latah County and this. So, but I think, all those things combined coming out of COVID, a lot of the contractors are having difficulty finding employees, and that was too, a labor shortage. So those are the things that I'm aware of.
Okay. And I just want to say, I walk by that Indian Hills Park almost every day because I live right there, and it's really nice to see a real bathroom there, and it really will improve the park because having just a porta potty there is not very appealing when you have a bunch of little kids at the playground, I imagine.
Except when you need one.
Yeah.
Okay, at this time, anybody from the public who wishes to make any comments, please pop up as part of the public hearing. Okay, hearing none, the hearing is closed, and that brings us to the end of the public hearing, does it not?
It does.
Okay, so moving on. I like that, where you don't actually have to come to a conclusion.
Thanks, Elisa.
Thank you.
Next up is the East City Park Stage Project Update. Cody Riddle.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As you'll recall, we brought you this item in a very abbreviated format in early May. At that time, council did approve a professional services agreement between the city and Design West Architects. That approval was to expand upon a project that was approved or developed, at least conceptually, a number of years ago, and to take that and advance it to a 30% conceptual design with cost estimate that'll help inform future budget and capital planning efforts. It was clear at that time, though, we could have provided a little bit more in the way of context and background that kind of what led us to that point. So that's really what we're here for today. It's not an action item, but again, is to provide a little better background information for you. It's wonderful that Ned Warnick with Design West Architects, who was actually involved or managed the project from a design standpoint years ago, is going to join us and kind of walk you through some of the background on the design and what led to the concept as it sits today. Once he wraps up, I'll kind of walk through some ideas we have or that we'd like to take on in terms of public outreach, just to get the message back out, because again, it has been a number of years since we went through the initial exercise. So with that, I'll turn things over to Ned.
Welcome, Ned.
Thank you. I think what Cody means in the wonderful is that I'm still alive and kicking to be able to be here before you. I have to say that when Bill and Cody reached out to me about this opportunity, I was thrilled. This was a great project that was not realized to its full extent at the time that we started the process. And so to have this opportunity to revisit and discuss it and to get council input on where we were at and what our thoughts were, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. And so I hope to give you a little bit of background on what happened 14 years ago and how we progressed to the point we're at, and then be able to hear what the council has to say about those things. And so as a quick introduction, in 2010, just almost exactly 14 years ago, we were engaged to enter into a planning and design process to replace the existing restrooms and stage at the East City Park. And I will tell you that you got 14 more years of use out of the volunteer-built stage than we ever thought you would get. At the time, that stage was in pretty rough shape, and for it to have made it all the way to now is pretty impressive. But that process that we went through in August and September of 2010 was intensive and extensive. The intensive work with the stakeholders of trying to understand what the needs were for different performances that happen at the park, and extensive in the sense that there was a lot of outreach involved with the Saturday market and other opportunities in the city, in City Hall and at the Hamilton Low Rec Center. As it unwound, or as time went by, the city was unable to arrive at the funds to be able to approach what the estimated cost of the project was at that time. And the restrooms were deteriorating faster than what the stage was. And so the original restrooms, or the existing restrooms at that time, needed to come down in 2012. And so at that point, the decision was made to phase the project. Originally, it was envisioned as a restroom and a stage together. And in 2012, the decision was to split the project and go ahead and get the new restrooms built. I'll cycle back to that a little bit later in this presentation, but to talk about the stakeholders, one of the things that was really enjoyable about my experience of working with the different people that were involved in this, and Ren Fair was represented there, as was Rendezvous in the Park and a number of the other major players. But to many of us, we might think a stage is a stage. Now, let's just get a platform up there and everything's going to be great. And then when you talk to these people, every one of them has their own ideas of what that stage will do. So you have speakers, you have presentations, you have award ceremonies, you have poetry readings, you have chamber music, you have jazz ensembles, you have drama productions, all of those things. And all of them have a very different approach to what they want that stage to be, from stage height to stage height off the ground, to stage height to the cover, to the sort of amenities that that stage will have. And it was a wonderful experience going through 3 stakeholder work sessions with these groups, because there was a real genuine desire to arrive at a good stage that would work for everybody. And so there was compromise and collaboration throughout all these different groups. Working through, I do want to point out, this has been really fun to prepare for this presentation, because I came across a picture of myself standing in almost this exact same location. And I went home and I told my wife about it, and she said, "I bet you were wearing earth tones." And she was right. But I digress. So some of the main conclusions that we came out of the process, and this is not just the bullet points that are there. There was not any expectation that we would try to arrive at a stage that would work for Rendezvous in the Park's biggest acts. And so that was an early thought. We thought originally that the stage would end up down towards the south from where the restrooms are, more in the arrangement of how the Rendezvous in the Park arranges the park. And really it came to the conclusion that an extra large Rendezvous in the Park stage wouldn't work for most of the uses of the stage in the park. And so that was kind of a conclusion coming out of the early work sessions. And we worked our way around to a small stage or a medium-sized stage is a good thing. A medium-sized stage in the center of the park, where it works most flexibly for the different events that happen in the park and is farthest away from the street noise, is a positive thing. And fine-tuning how it addresses the topography of the park was a good thing. And so all of those things related to arriving at a master plan that...
Can you just go back?
Sure.
Can I just interrupt? I already did, but I just want to point out that Arlene is in that picture too.
And she's also in the
She's here
audience today.
today.
Good eye,
Sorry.
Julia.
Almost in the exact same
I
arrangements.
know.
Let's get a picture. Let's get a picture of this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted
Good
to
eye.
point that out, Arlene. Thank you. But I recognize the shirt.
And so the master plan arrived at you can see the dashed line of what the original restrooms and stage were located very much in the very center of the park. And the original stage had problems with big trees in front of it, facing straight west, so performers had sun in their eyes. And really, it worked for very small gatherings with the slope, but if you got very large crowds, you were kind of over the crown of the hill or back in the bushes. And so the rotation served the rotation around to being more at an angle to the northwest for the stage and facing uphill worked better for the topography. So we end up having more of an amphitheater sort of effect. And 14 years ago, I actually had kids that still played in the playground. And I would always be frustrated when I'd come to a performance and that I either had to decide to be a good parent or watch the performance. And, it was a coin flip depending on what I did that day. But in this arrangement, the playground and the expanded playground that's happened at the kind of the crown of the hill is available to kids, but at the same time, parents can keep an eye on the performance and the kids at the same time. And so that was a major positive. The other thing is that by moving the stage a little bit to the southeast, we opened up what we affectionately call the Dancers Plaza. And so the kind of mud pit or the muddy front of stage condition is something that we want to address with this project, with something that is more of an all-weather surface that would allow a level dancing area, but also one that doesn't turn into mud when we have a Ren Fair, for example, which for all the right reasons happens in the spring when sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate. And so that's the background on what the arrangement or the kind of the master plan of how this fits into the overall East City Park area. The floor plan to the right is what we envisioned when we originally started the project, where it would be one combined arrangement. And as the budget constraints set in and we moved into 2012, we looked for a more compact restroom arrangement and a way for us to at least start down the road of moving towards this stage. And so the existing restroom that is there now is a result of that. And so in my mind, I think of that as phase one. We just taken our time to get to phase two, but I understand it's time that we should revisit that. I had to me, it was a humorous conversation with Cody was, well, gosh, I need to drive by and make sure there hasn't been a tree that grew up in the wrong place that would undermine this. And I would say in looking at the park today, I can easily envision this being built out the way that it was envisioned. I think that the park has evolved in the way that we expected. The large trees, we won't be taking down any of those, and the open amphitheater space is there and available for us to develop this. The stage changes shape a little bit to reflect the arrangement of the first phase restroom, but the size, the heights, the features and the support spaces are all the same as what we imagined back in 2010. And this is a little bit out of date because the restroom block is now a little bit bigger, and actually the roof slopes the opposite direction from what it does in option A. But this was a fun exercise for me in my hometown, is to have this up at Saturday Market and have this be voted upon. And so you get actual crowdsourcing of design input, as opposed to you talk to a few clients, you do something, and then it turns out that nobody likes it. Here's something where we had a chance to really roll this out to the Saturday Market crowd. And so these three options were provided to Saturday Market. The first one we affectionately called the piano. The second one was just the barrel arch. And the third one was the gable. And so those were provided to Saturday Markets, I think, 2 or 3 times, along with council chambers. And I would guess it's a resounding victory. The majority vote was option B, which was the barrel vault. And that is still an option that can be explored in this dusting off and moving into phase 2. There's a few quotes from some of the outreach efforts that we did back in 2010, and that it reinforced that the work that we had done with the stakeholder group. I think people felt like we were making good decisions, and it would end up being the kind of stage that would help expand the use of the park.
Yeah, so in terms of next steps, we do a lot of work did go into this, but again, it was 14 years ago. Other than Ned and a couple folks in the room, the public deserve to know what we're up to. So, along with updating the conceptual design, we want to go through an outreach process this summer that would include leveraging the audience we have right there at the farmers market. We could have another open house at City Hall where we could solicit feedback. Again, building on the work that's already been done, not starting from scratch, looking at a new site layout, but building on the work that had already been done. We'd like to explore having a display at something like Rendezvous in the park, or anything at the park itself where people are on site and can actually visualize it with display boards, things like that. A series of stakeholder meetings with some of the people that host specific events at the park and know it better than a lot of us, and then certainly leverage our website as an opportunity for additional outreach. So again, We have a professional services agreement approved with Design West Architects. Again, that's to build upon previous design and outreach effort. That'll culminate later this summer in a 30% conceptual design and cost estimate. Nothing beyond that. We're not authorizing construction with that agreement, but really to help us inform future budget and capital improvement planning. Any additional expenses related, that would certainly have to come back to you for approval. So I think that's what we wanted to walk you through today. We're both available for any questions you might have, and happy to help.
I just want to say thank you for walking us through that. It was helpful because it's been so long since we did the public outreach. It's good to have the reminders about what all was done. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. You can't ask.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Ned, for the presentation, and thank you, Cody, for making this happen again. This is very helpful to build on from what we discussed back in May, so I'm happy to have more input and more intel. I'm sure all of my colleagues have received a handful of emails of people that are definitely out in the community that are reluctant, to say the least, about having the stage moved for a variety of reasons. So I'm curious, from either the city perspective or Ned, if you want to weigh in as well, what are some replies or what are some things that we can tell concerned community members that ask, well, what if we just kind of rebuilt a nice stage in the current location of the current stage, as opposed to moving it to that slight northwest, moving it slightly to the northwest. So I'm curious, like what replies would you encourage us or to consider or offer to some of those concerned community members?
I'd love to take a crack at it. Ned's probably spent a lot more time on site than I have, but I spent a lot of time out there on site, and I think you can see in the new location just the orientation as trees have matured over the years and the space that's available with that natural topography. We can accommodate a lot more seating, a lot more flexibility. The existing stage as it sits today, you have 2 or 3 trees that are blocking, a third of the vision to the actual performances. And I've had the unfortunate experience of, enough of a crowd that I'm sitting over there. So that's kind of difficult. I think if you really sit on site, you can see just what led to the design that Ned worked on years ago.
And I did walk through East City last week and try to do some visualization as well and prep for tonight, and just kind of getting some feedback from community members as well, and kind of like visualizing that as well, and thinking, well, again, I'm sure that we could all kind of have these like little what if moments of what if we just moved it back 10 feet, but still in the same orientation that it's been in, right? So it still has that homage to years past and homage to folks that have put blood, sweat, and tears on that stage of the community that would be really reluctant to see it just ripped up and moved over to the northwest. But I appreciate the kind of refocus on the orientation, but I do think that their concerns, are definitely not without merit, right? But I appreciate your response.
Go ahead. Yeah, this helps some. I am still left with more questions than anything. I'm still really, really hesitant because this is helpful for me. I've scribbled very concerned with total vote participation for these. If what we're asking for input on were these 3 profiles, and now there is a conversation, I still feel like there should be an option for public input for there to replace the stage footprint where it is and not move it, because the questions that come into mind are like, is it Answer Plaza going to be grass or paved? Are we going to have to pave more things? Are trees going to have to come down? Are we going to have to pave more for load in and load out? Are we going to have to move the path location? And are we going to just have a longer outage for East City Park for this, when we could potentially be looking at a quote for just replacing the stage where it is, in addition to honoring the historic homage of all of our community members who gave blood, sweat, and tears to build this when it was a community-led thing. I'm really glad we're seeing more engagement. I'm really concerned that what I'm understanding is what we sourced from even 100 votes. And I think you'll have a much better feedback at whatever farmers market we table at this time around, which will be cool to see, is that we were asking for input on the profile and not on moving the stage. Like, I'm really concerned that the general public outside of those stakeholders what I'm hearing is, yes, I would love some additional clarification, because what I'm hearing and what I'm hearing from the community who are looking at these meeting minutes and things like that was that the public point of input for the general public outside of those key stakeholders was just like what the
I
silhouette was going
agree.
to
I think
be.
those are two separate issues. The aesthetic decision of what shape this stage takes is the second question that needs to be answered. The first question needs to be answered is the decision that was reached in 2010 about moving the stage? And I would be curious from your perspective in terms of the input of people who are saying, I want to keep the stage where it's at. Are those people performers? Are those people that,
Yes.
and that is odd to me because that was not the result of the 2010. And there was a lot of discussion about the orientation being difficult for crowd because of the two large trees that obstruct the view and ruin the audience experience, and that you don't have an array of audience that you can make connection with, and also busts up any ability of that you have for understanding what your acoustics are doing out in that space. And then the other is the complaints of the west sun, and that if you get caught, if you are performing on the wrong day at sunset, you aren't seeing anything at all because of that
Yeah.
west orientation.
And I guess we've had 15 years of tree growth, so I'm curious about that. And the other thing I'll add, so on my way here, I stopped by the Rendezvous board meeting. I was on the board for 12 years. I can't speak for the board now. I am a recovering boardie, you could say. And I mean,
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
it's been one day since I've been to a meeting for Rendezvous. And times have changed. I had a good conversation with Bill Boxman, who helped form Rendezvous back when it was still under the city umbrella. And anymore, the contracts for the artists, even when I was helping a few years ago secure artist contracts, they will require a 4-foot tall stage. And nearly no other event in Moscow will have that same sort of need. So Rendezvous is not really your ideal client for this. They are still happy to play nice. Rendezvous for Kids still uses it. But my concerns stem from what that also impacts as far as load in, load out for other. It was good to hear that from Rendezvous. They're happy to, give more input, but I'm concerned that enough things have changed in 15 years since we got here. And I still have a really hard time understanding what 30% gets me, because I would still love to know what 30% of copy paste existing footprint would be, because my understanding from Bill and Cody is that's still going to be as much money as it's going to cost us to shift it. But there's a lot of unknowns. I'm glad 30% gets us some more community input, but I'm thinking that the silhouette, you boiled it down perfectly, Ned. Like, the silhouette is a question, but I am more concerned that we are getting enough input from the community who have adjusted to having the bathroom and stage as separate things, that moving the stage is now the hotter topic.
Okay,
I'm not
so hold on, Gina.
So I come from the performance angle, right? And I do hang around. I mean, East City Park is kind of it's one of the holy grails of being able to perform, right? I mean, because it's right in the middle of where we all live, right? And you are completely correct that if you're there on the wrong night, you are bleeding and you're sweating and you are wishing you weren't. And it is.
Song about that?
I might write a song about that once my retinas recover. I do think that that it is important at this point to, exactly like you're saying, Ned, separate the two questions, but you've got to get answers to both of them. And I think that 15 years, like Haley said, a lot has changed, including trees and growing up, and maybe we don't have retinal damage when we stand at the microphone anymore. And so I think this is one of these opportunities for the city now to capitalize on opportunities for the community to weigh in. And leave that darn website open until it is smoking from so many people bringing in their thoughts, right? And make sure we're at these events, because this is the moment. And 30%, all right, 30% of kind of this idea right now gets us closer, but no, this is no decision-making moment. We just need to identify the questions, answer them, and move on as a community. So
I will say, I mean, that's great. I would follow your lead. The hesitancy I would have is that, at least from my experience, 2010, is I think the answer that we would have gotten without having the collaborative work sessions of the multiple different performers together wouldn't be as good as what we got. And I agree, it may have changed, but for us to solicit input from the Saturday market, I joke that, it's great that we got public input on the aesthetic side of this, but being involved in those 3 stakeholder sessions and working through the different, what's the sweet spot in size? We can't afford to have a Rendezvous in the Park stage over there. We don't want a 4-foot tall platform for kids Rendezvous in the Park or a Ren Fair performers or any of those things. And so we dialed that stage up and down. We rotated it around. And so my concern is that without at least respecting that baby that's in the bathwater, I'm nervous about the idea of let's throw that baby out and let's start over again and not have that same sort of guided master planning process.
Do we have to throw it out?
I don't know. I'm trying to understand. I would be really curious.
I don't think we should. I think it's one of the options.
Hold on. So.
I think that we respect, like we're all saying, get homage to everything, right? So one of the options is moving it. One of the options is not moving it. And then everybody can weigh in and still respect the work that you did. But this is one counselor. I am merely throwing out Gina's ideas.
Do you have a vision as to how that question would be posed to what groups?
Well, now you're way above my pay grade, Ned.
Okay.
I do not know that answer. What I can say is if we don't ask it, it's going to be more damaging than if we do.
Correct.
So, Drew.
One comment before I ask my real question. Ned taught my professional practice class in college, and so I am a little intimidated.
Whatever you're city council. Likewise.
I did review all my notes, Ned, before you came, though, just to make sure everything was kosher. I will say, in reviewing those notes, going back from 2013, the one thing that you did bring up, and I know I'm going back, but there's a point to the story, is in the class you talk about engaging with the public. How that's a critical process, but also how it's extremely difficult process, because no matter what you do to engage with the public, there's always going to be a part of that pie that is always going to be upset, no matter how you go about that. And so your methods that you spoke about, that you exhibited in 2010, right, during this time till now, is you can only do so much with what people give you, right? And no matter what people give you, you're going to. And I know you know this. I'm regurgitating what you told me, and something I still use today, right? And that process it's hard, and from this perspective, it's even more difficult because there's going to be people upset. The concerns and questions that I have are, you've talked about them. You're going to talk about them at further lengths, engaging the public. But questions I want to pose to the public and to everyone that sits behind this bench, that I all respect your opinions deeply, is, let's say the current location of the stage, we spend X amount of dollars. We're not going to go into how much it costs to reconstruct that. This happened 40 years ago. Are we looking at what the next 40 years of the stage are going to be for our community? How are they going to be different, and how have they changed? This stage needs to last more than 40 years for the public. And as trees, as landscape, all these things change, we need to think about that. And the reality is, I don't know what the key to success is, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody in this process.
Agreed.
And the decision of moving this, and I'm really thankful. Last week, I had the opportunity to be in 3 people's homes. They kindly invited me into their homes to talk about this. I was more than happy to do that. Their hospitality was fantastic, and we had a fantastic. Two of them are here in the crowd today, where I came over and spoke with them, and the idea and the location of the stage does not tread on. We're not grateful for the efforts that were done 40 years ago. Quite frankly, they are a catalyst for culture in our community. This new location is only to enhance that. And the question that I pose that we don't need answers to, but what other programs or what other end users could be using the stage that aren't currently using it because of locations and its limitations? And we have to judge that based on time. And that is an extremely difficult thing, as Ned can attest to. How do you design for the future, and how do you embrace the past? Mm-hmm. And as we move forward, I would like this to be 100 years. They're going to open up the meeting notes and they're like, who was that guy on council named Drew that thought? Like, if that's the conversation, that's where it's going to go, right? But we're going to design this for longer than 40 years, and we're designing it to address the extremely growing needs of a community that love art and need to support that at a much larger scale than what we're going to. And they're hard decisions, and all the people I've talked to, received emails to, communicated with, I thank you, and I continue to invite you to give feedback. But I hope that how we view this is an open-minded approach for what the future will be. Because in 100 years, I'm not going to be here. Not, to be honest, probably none of us are going to be here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I invite you to say, how does this help our community for the long run while still respecting what is done in the past? And that was addressed through community outreach. And I commend you for doing that and walking us through that. So thank you. And thank you for your pro practice class in 2013.
Haley, back to you.
My questions were never to imply that I'm not open to this. I'm feeling a lot of feelings. My therapist would tell me to name them, and I don't even know where to start. I'm driven by frugality. I'm driven by being scrappy. And again, the reason I keep banging the drum about not moving the stage is because I still don't even understand what it looks like for us to not move the stage. I feel like I don't have a big enough picture to be excited about moving it. And so that being the penny pincher I am driven by understanding if with public engagement, which is very hard. And I know I will never make everyone happy, and I can hardly make myself happy, both sides of myself happy in a day. I want to understand what not moving it would look like in terms of finances, in terms of if our community is happy with that or not. And so Gina, like I think what you were able to verbalize after I ran down all my list of big question marks about the Dancers Plaza and the grass and the trees and the path and whatever. Yeah, eye to the future. Those things can be uncomfortable for a couple of years, and we may be better for it if we move the stage. But I just want to understand if I can appease a number of people, if the majority of people are happy with us not moving the stage by copy pasting, putting it where it is, keeping them as two separate buildings, and understanding what the cost is. And I don't know what 30% will get me in terms of those numbers, because my sense is that 30% will give us updated numbers with the shift to the Northwest. So, Mr. Mayor.
I think it's
Always going to hit Ned about the finance issue, perhaps.
within our professional services contract. I think it is reasonable for us to array those options before you.
Love it.
What I will say is that with both of them, there is a spectrum as to what we can do. So your question about the Dancers Plaza, that's going to have a dollar figure associated with it. And so if you want that, I'll say that's the price tag. It's got $25,000 attached to it. The size of the stage and the question of where it lands, I think we can give you some feedback, or I can give city staff that sort of feedback, and we can tell you that. I would love to go back through the same experience. I hope Arlene will show up again and we can do it all again. But that is a lot more intensive. Your request is a reasonable one, and within a 30% design effort, asking what does it cost here versus what does it cost here? That's included in that.
Great.
And so we can provide you that sort of feedback. I will be excited to hear the feedback as that comes back, because we did not have a lot of sentimental attachment to the old stage 14 years ago. And maybe it managed to cross the historic preservation mark, but if it was only 40 years ago, it didn't. So, but there was not a lot of hesitancy 14 years ago. But your request is reasonable, and I'm perfectly happy that can be something that we include in our analysis.
Yeah, and I can't tell if now as it's falling apart that if that's what's made it sentimental for us. I've always been fairly sentimental for it, but I remember how awful those bathrooms were before the arson case happened. Like, I mean, I remember, to your earlier comment, Ned, like, I think I get the fear of rehashing or starting from square one with public input can be messy. There are new stakeholders like the Earth Day folks, and there are a couple other, new festivals that I'd be curious to hear as newer users to the park would think about these things. But I guess, what I am most interested in learning from the public is, do you want to move the stage or not? Because I am overwhelmingly what I have heard, granted bias from who is willing to reach out to me, are people who are not stoked on it. So I'm curious.
Julia.
Haley, can you let me talk now? Thank you. All right. I have a couple of things. One is that I do think we respectfully need to move forward in Moscow. And sometimes that is super hard. And people don't want things to change because we live in a great community. And I understand that. I don't love change either. But I think there are real concrete reasons for us to move the stage. And that is that we can allow for better seating, more seating, that the view of the stage isn't blocked by large old trees, that we won't, as I understand it, we won't need to cut down any of the older trees in the park if we reorient the stage. Whereas if we build a bigger stage right there, we would run into some big trees. And so I understand that people have feelings about the stage. And I saw, my little girl up there doing ballet on that old stage too. And, I have nostalgia for it. And I've been to a lot of events there, of course, with my kids and through the years. But the reality is we're growing, we're changing, our arts community is growing, and we need to provide them with a stage that's appropriate for them and a place for people to engage in the arts performances that's big enough for our population. And so I know that people have a lot of feelings about this, but I think there's real concrete, no pun intended, reasons to adjust East City Park and make it something usable for everyone. And so I would love to figure out some way to be respectful of the work that people did 40 years ago. I count many of them among my friends, and figure out a way to honor that by using the stage, using the wood, doing something, to honor that. That's a good idea. But I really think that this is a change that is necessary. And so I understand we want to get a lot of public input, but when there's real concrete issues to just keeping things the same or rebuilding in the same spot, then we have to give voice to those things as well. So I'm just trying to understand Moscow. We like our town, we like things the same, but I think this change in the stage was designed this way for a reason 14 years ago, and those reasons haven't changed.
Gina.
I think that I'm a big fan of community input. I am not a fan of community input until you are a bloody pulp on the ground. What I think is important is this 30% moment. Is this 30% moment of here's what we envisioned X amount of years ago and what it can bring. And I'm a huge fan of moving it because retinas. Okay. I think it will be illuminating. Again,
Concrete.
at that 30, concrete and illuminating. This 30% moment will be huge, So I appreciate that you are willing to give us both of the options and kind of to understand that.
And just to clarify, 30% is, we're 30% on the way to somewhere. There's a
Right.
lot of things that happen between 0 and 30%. And so this background of trying to give you the idea of what has gone on before is not to say it's going to be cut and paste. There's work that goes into that process. And I am intrigued because there's clearly some level of groundswell out there about what does it mean to keep something closer to what was original. And having listened to Alyssa's budget woes, I can tell you that I went through the exact same thing through the last 2 or 3 years on many projects. And I think we need to be able to talk to city staff about an array of options as we move towards, this is the 30% that we get to after I do all my work.
Right.
So anyway, to wrap up, because we've gotten kind of circular,
Yep.
is to sort of provide the direction to make the effort to get more community outreach done, get some more input from community, and then as part of a 30%, get a financial comparison between reconstruct where it is versus reconstructing the new, and have some kind of a more or less, certainly not exact, but just a ballpark estimate of who's going to cost how much. They might be the same, in which case then we're back down to the decision based on community input. So that's kind of how I see things from where I was sitting, more or less.
Do we move to accept the report?
Yeah, so that's it.
Yep.
So-
Good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you very much.
So, okay, now we're on to Homeland Security Investigations Joint Task Force Reimbursement Agreement. Bill?
Thank you, Your Honor. Anthony was not able to make it this evening, so I'll be presenting this item for him. So as the council is aware, Detective Mowry is part of the ICAC, the Idaho Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force that's overseen by the Idaho Attorney General's Office. As part of that, he also serves as a member of the task force with the Homeland Security Investigations, and this is all related to Internet Crimes Against Children. We've been presented with an agreement with Homeland Security Investigations that would provide for the reimbursement of any overtime expenses that Detective Mowry would incur during those investigations. So we haven't had that really happen. We do tend to try to manage Detective Mowry's time with comp time, just given the nature of the crimes that he ends up having to investigate. It's better to have time away than having additional compensation. So we have managed that time generally through compensatory time. So while we don't have an immediate or don't maybe expect to have immediate need to be reimbursed with overtime expenses, this would provide that opportunity should that arise. So it's a fairly simplistic agreement. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
I just have one, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I'm in this, and on the agenda, I guess I'm confused by this wording, the sentence that says, the Idaho Attorney General's Office is seeking this agreement solely to reimburse his overtime for investigations. So I guess
So
This
that
is
position
between
is fully funded. So it's between us and the agency,
okay, because that's who we're authorizing the agreement to, but
but his position is funded through the Attorney
AG.
General's Office.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay,
So
thank
this
you.
would avoid any, the AG's office from incurring any overtime expenses related to his investigations.
got it.
Gina?
I'm going to make a motion. I'm ready. I move we approve the agreement between the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Moscow Police Department to allow for reimbursement by HSI.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Julia?
Aye.
Bryce?
Aye.
Drew?
Aye.
Haley?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
Okay, excellent. And moving on, the Moscow Pullman, and I'm glad to phrase it that way, Moscow Pullman Airport Federal Grant Pre-Authorization Request.
Every time I have the opportunity. So this is a similar resolution to the council has seen multiple times before. A lot of the FAA grants with the airport move very quickly. And so when we have an anticipation of a potential grant award, then oftentimes we have to seek council's authorization as sponsors of the airport to accept that grant in advance, because once it's awarded, things do move fairly quickly. So there are two particular grants that the airport is seeking and pursuing. One is a grant for $1.5 million to support kind of the final phase of master planning for the airport operations, primarily focused on the land side of the operations, so the general aviation, the hangars, cargo and charter operations. And so that grant request is 1.5 million. The local match that we require will be between 100 and 150,000, depending upon the amount of the grant award. And that match will be covered by the airport out of airport revenues for passenger or parking. The second grant was to do phase 4 of the terminal apron construction. So that'll add 2,700 square feet of additional apron space for airport or airplane parking at the terminal. That grant request for the apron project is for 3.5 million. That'll have a local match again of $388,889. Again, that local match is also being funded by the airport out of parking revenues and passenger revenues. So there is no financial obligation to the city, but as the airport is jointly operated by both the city of Moscow and city of Pullman, we are the sponsors for the grants. We have to officially accept and pre-authorize acceptance of those grant funds. So the resolution has been presented for the council to pass that would provide that pre-authorization. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions the council might have on this matter.
Okay.
I move that we approve the resolution providing pre-authorization to accept up to $5 million in federal grant funding.
Second.
Hey, Julia and Bryce on that one. Further discussion?
I like the Moscow.
Yeah, it's got to be Moscow.
You're still on that, are you?
I'm always on that. So, Bryce,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Good, good. So that takes us to the bottom of the agenda. Now we're on to reports. So, Gina.
I will attend a affordable housing, Moscow Affordable Housing. No, Fair and Affordable Housing. Gosh, those two I get confused. Fair and Affordable Housing Committee meeting our commission meeting on Thursday. And I was so excited. I had this whole week planned. Tomorrow evening was going to be the tree commission, and then they canceled the meeting. So I will probably just sit around and cry. But other than that, I'm looking forward to the Fair and Affordable Housing Group. That's all, sir.
Oh, okay. Drew.
Yeah, so a couple of items. I'll start with Parks and Rec. What I oversee there, I wasn't able to make it to the Parks and Rec meeting last week. However, our city staff on Parks and Rec has been really busy engaging with end users of all of our rec facilities, especially like the ball fields. Really appreciate how detail oriented the staff has been and working with these end users. Our deputy supervisors, David Schott, they've all been great. And we had a meeting today at 3:30 talking to end users about how collaboration could be increased and how communication could be better. And I think people have asked, why does it take so long to have meetings? Because there's lots of meetings that are happening that people aren't a part of. And what our staff is doing is they're open and they're listening to how they want our kids and adults to recreate in our parks and our ball fields. And so we should be thankful that we have staff that are working diligently to resolve some of these issues at hand. So that's one thing. The other is the rec side of the programming. Kirby Johnson was just hired for a position, and I, for one, am really excited to have Kirby on board. Lots of energy. I'm thankful that the skill set she's going to bring to, I think, expand communication in our department is going to be great. One of these is that already she's put her mind to it. This coming Monday, I just spoke with her today, is the 20th anniversary of the HERC. And so that's a pretty cool thing. It's crazy for some people if we say that 20 years. I won't tell you how old I was 20 years ago. I'm just kidding. But,
Thank you.
With that, there's going to be the pool's going to be opening this Friday. People are going to be getting pool passes probably on Monday. There's going to be some type of celebration festivity with some treats, looking like some root beer floats. So I'm going to be there serving it, but get it out to your friends. We're going to be there celebrating that. And
What day is that, Drew?
that's this coming Monday, 4 till 6.
At the Herc or?
At the Herc. And so
No, not at the pool.
The pool.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah,
at the
we
Herc.
have-
I was going to joke that it was at City Hall. Sorry.
But we're going to, and all council members are invited to help kind of dish up ice cream floats. So if you can make it, great. Also coming up June 11th, there's our bike tour for Pathways Commission. So those that are able to come, please come. We'll be meeting over at Mountain View Park doing our tour. And there's other things, but I like living in Moscow. That's all I got. So.
Julia.
Well, both of my meetings got canceled. I was supposed to do Sustainable Environment Commission and Clearwater Economic Development Association, and they both got canceled. But this week I have Farmers Market Commission. So that is always fun and enlightening.
Cool.
And this week is Moscow High School graduation. So speaking of change is hard. Change is hard. I have 2 seniors graduating. So if I'm home crying, you'll know.
It's not the tree commission.
So congratulations to all those Moscow High School graduates.
Haley.
Nothing.
Got nothing. Bryce.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I have one commission to report on, which was the Human Rights Commission. We met a couple last week, 2 weeks ago, actually. And I will not be able to make the next upcoming Human Rights Commission because that is the day before many of us are going to Boise. So that is on the 18th. So I want to say a couple of announcements with regards to the commission that encapsulates all of June, just because feels like important to do while it's fresh from that last meeting. But Juneteenth is on a Wednesday this year. And so be on the lookout for various details surrounding that. The commission's working with a couple of folks on campus, Mario Pyle in particular, with regards to having a meaningful recognition of that date. And then also later in the month on June 29th, that day is a big day for the Human Rights Commission because they'll be tabling at the market, just kind of getting the word out about the work that the Human Rights Commission does. Additionally, that night at the Kenworthy is Diva Night. I think it's at 6:30 or 7 p.m. And it should be a pretty lively and fun scene down there. There has not been a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting since April 24th. There will be one next week on the 12th, so we'll see what shakes out there. And then if I may, Mr. Mayor, I've got something a little bit more personal to offer that's happened in the last 2 weeks since our last meeting. And I actually closed on my first ever house here in Moscow. So my roots are getting even deeper. I thought city council would, help me get deeper, and then you buy a house and then you just kind of continue to get plugged in even more. But the reason why I mention this is as it relates to a firsthand experience of how difficult it is to buy a house and to afford a house here, even in this region. And I say that in full transparency that this house was listed at $325,000 and I went in at $330,000. But a majority of those funds I couldn't have done on my own for a down payment. And my dad had set up a life insurance policy for me about 30 years ago that we cashed out to help for the down payment. And without that help, I wouldn't have been able to purchase this house. And I say all that by way of saying that I take kind of the seriousness affecting the region about affordable housing on a very firsthand experience of this opportunity that has been afforded to me. And I'm very grateful to my dad to have the foresight many years ago to set up this fund. But having this firsthand experience the last couple of weeks over the last month or two to kind of be in this process and just recognizing that I literally couldn't have done that without that assistance is very eye-opening. And I know that I am very privileged in that capacity. And I know that many people don't even have that option or will ever have that option. And so kind of living in this little bit of a double space to be heightened aware of one of the joys and the excitement. I'm very thrilled about this house. And I'm very thrilled about what that means about my existence in Moscow and with the community, but also taking very seriously that it's a very luckied it's a very lucky position that I was able to be in, and I don't take any of that for granted. And so being involved in conversations surrounding affordable housing, being involved in conversations surrounding those that are trying to buy their first home, a lot like me, and for those that maybe don't have the option that I was able to have with the foresight from my father, is something that's been very real and very prevalent on my mind the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to share that as an anecdote for us on council and to the community members as well, that it's been a very eye-opening experience in a lot of different levels. And I may have to reach out for maintenance because I haven't mowed a yard in 15 years, because that's how long I've been renting. So, yeah.
Welcome to
Yeah.
homeowners.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome from the rental frying pan into the homeowner fire.
Thank you. Thank you. It just got hotter. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, for my part, we now have an operational new airport terminal that opened back on the 22nd. Really nice for those of you who've made it out there. For those of you who haven't yet, I'm sure you will. Very, very nice facility. Very well laid out and very easy to navigate and operate, and quite a pleasant space, and so much better than the old terminal is now. The parking is now set up for ticket drawing when you go in, put the ticket when you go out, or pay at a kiosk inside. Gives you a half an hour before you make your exit and you can get back out. License plate readers will pop you open if needs be. And for the folks who are parked at the old terminal yet, the number dwindles with each passing day, but half hour after each flight arrives, Pullman Transit Bus will pull up and take people on down to the old ones so they can get their car back. That'll go on probably until the last 2 cars are out there, and then after that, somebody at the terminal will give you a ride, I guess. So got that. Working on advertising, getting the advertising contracts signed for the place. The janitorial contracts are in place. The IT contracts are in place. Still working on concessionaires yet. Probably won't have anything happen until we get back to our 6 or 7 flights a day come fall. So make it worthwhile for the concessionaire. But anyway, the terminal is open. Looks great. Jetways, you don't have to walk out in the weather. It's fun.
How was the TSA experience on that first 5 a.m. flight?
Well, it went as well as anyone could hope, because they had 14 hours to move all of the scanning equipment up from the old terminal to the new terminal, 14 hours. And then when I got there, went through pre-check. Well, unfortunately, they had the 2 metal stanchions for the webbing that forms the rat maze that we all get to go through. They had the 2 metal stanchions sitting too close to the metal detector. And so anything that even moved, it beeped. And so you could have taken off every stitch of clothing you had and you'd still beep that thing. So finally they started figuring out, oh, we need to move these stanchions away. They're metal and they're triggering the detector. So anyway, a few hiccups, still trying to learn how to move the jetways back and forth. I think there has got to be a video game someplace called Jetway that people can practice maneuvering a jetway up to the door of an airplane, because it is ridiculous, this seesawing. But anyway, they get better with each day, and even in the going and coming, it was better very rapidly. So they're improving it quite a lot. And on the 1st of June, this last Saturday, we had the Lee Newbill Safety Fair for kids. Gave away a whole slug of helmets, had bicycle instruction, Life Flight landed out there, much to the dismay of the people with the tents, and they're sitting there hanging onto the tent, holding it down when the helicopter came in. Really a fun event, and everybody had a really good time. So congratulations to Moscow Police Department, Fire and EMS departments for putting this on annually for the kids in town for bike safety, and giving away a lot of car seats, helmets, and teaching people how to use them right. Anything from staff?
Just a reminder, we have the bi-monthly meeting on Wednesday. It's a lunch meeting, not breakfast, so 11:30 to 1 at the University Inn. University Inn.
Right on.
They did say send in your
Pre-order.
You'll order
Margot
it.
sent out emails if you might help expedite service if you want to send her your order. If anybody needs me to send that again, just let me know.
Okay, there we go. Shall we flee?
Yes.
Okay, we can flee. Adjourned.
Adjourned.